Good afternoon. Welcome back to Studio Woo and an old guy jamming. We're here with a PRS nut job today. If you remember from a while back, I showed you how grossly large the nut was on the PRS machine. And I told you I'd be taking it down. And instead of using a Dremel, this tusk material, or graphite, graphtec, whatever you want to call it, it's not bone and it's not brass, it's plastic. And whether it's graphite infused plastic or some other form, it's just plastic. But it's quality plastic. It's not cheap plastic. But I used this wood block to keep everything nice and flat. Old school, chicka 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 chicka. And took that down, swipe-a, trying to keep it level with the strings, and I took it down until I started hitting the strings. And you can see right now we're at a situation where there is a lot of goop on the top of that. It doesn't look too good, and that's okay. It's just the grooves are all full of goop. But we're ready to start taking down the grooves. I can clean this out a little bit here with a toothbrush. I'll take time to clean this out properly, and we'll take time to polish off the top of that nut with some really fine 1000 grit sandpaper and some water or some spit to polish that up super nice. But that's where we are now, and it didn't take too long to take that down nicely with that sanding block. And I think it's 150 grit. And then I hit it with some about 300, 400 paper. Anyway, in here I've got my 16 thousandths file that we made the other day. And I'm going to proceed to loosen this string until it's loose enough that I can pull it off the nut. And then remember, I'm going to pull through like this, not push. Push makes it too aggressive, but I'm going to pull through lightly and just widen this up a bit, because what I'm noticing is I have some tuning issues where sometimes the string doesn't release all the way when I use the whammy bar. Now, a lot of that first material that come out was just powder, but I have a ways to go here, and I can just, this isn't too aggressive, and I want to keep this angle, this parallel to the angle of the strings back here. It's called a break angle, and just work that through a couple times. And then I put my string back in, bring it up to tension, or real close to it. As long as it's tight. It needs to be tight enough not to bend over the nut. And then check it, and that's pretty darn close to the string. That's come down a little ways already. So that's pretty nice and tight. That's almost, that's about 0 fret there. So that one's done. And now I'll just do the same thing to this one with my next size file up, which is the 25 thousandths. And that'll open that up. Then I'll do this one, this one, this one, and that one. These bigger ones aren't such a big deal. This is where I'm having the problem. And the nut could come down anyway, because when I play A major and D and A minor, there's some intonation, well, tuning problems there too, so my nut's too high. And then another thing I noticed, which is kind of interesting, is that the back of the strings are not riding on the nut, and that's a potential area for vibration, which doesn't really cause a problem, but it's just a buzz. It's real slight. It can be a real slight vibration that's realized not only here, but outside here along the string. So, a big old wide nut like that, like this, it just has inherent problems, whereas the nuts that you see on the Charvel or the Telecasters, with it being a real narrow nut or a brass nut or a zero fret guitar, doesn't have those same problems because the area that the string rides on is so narrow and the contact is kind of rounded. So there's not the inherent buzz and vibrations. Anyway, I'll take that down and polish this up and be right back. So we're at this third slot right here, third string down, D string, and it's supposed to be, it's a 26 thousandths string. So I'm using my 28 thousandths file. And when I started pulling through, the file was binding on the sides of the groove before I ever got down to any depth adjustment. So like I said, in these upper slots, the sandpaper can be useful, but you don't want to dig with that because when you crease sandpaper, you lose the adhesive, you lose the grit along that sharp bend because the paper often cracks. So it's not real good for depth, but when you get into these upper ones, I used this to just slide right in that slot a little bit, and it opened it up nicely. Just a stroke or two was all it took, and now my 25 or so thousandths, actually I'm going to use this 28 because the D string is 26 thousandths, and so then when I pulled this through, it pulled through nicely, and now I'm able to get a little material removal as well. Blow that out, put the string back in, tighten, and check it, and that is just real nice. It's about like having a capo on. These are nice. You don't want any buzz ringing those big open chords, but those are all real nice now. This one may still be a little bit high, but I may try it first. Another thing too, another good reason to take this down, you know, when it was so high, the grooves were really deep. How are you ever going to get any graphite down in your groove, or oil for that matter, without it just becoming a sloppy mess? Nut sauce or F1 or whatever you use, if your nut's so high and your grooves are really deep, you're not going to get any lube down in there, and you're not going to be able to clean them out when you change the strings because you just can't get anything down in there. So, you know, this huge nut with deep grooves, there's lots of reasons it doesn't make sense. So I've got this one, the E and the A to clean out, and then I'm going to polish this up so it's nice and shiny, and we'll see you then. All right, so there is the finished product. I like it. We're down nice and low. This microphone hates music. Everything back here is really low. Sounds good.